The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from Dallas Cowboys training camp in Oxnard, California.
Howard streaks in, touchdown. Parsons has sacked it. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
And now your hosts, Isaiah Stanback, Nick Harris, John Machota, and Kyle Yeomans.
It's a Wednesday edition of Talkin Cowboys presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Dallas Cowboys. We are here 9 a.m. in the morning, 11 a.m. Central Time. But we are back on the tennis courts in Oxnard, California as Cowboys training camp continues. We have 2 padded practices down. We've got a couple more to go before the Cowboys take on the Jaguars next Saturday in preseason game number 1. Alongside John Machota, Nick Harris, Isaiah Stanback, I'm Kyle Yeomans. Good news is we all survived the media party last night, and we're here. But the even better news is that we are here, and we're able to talk some Cowboys today. Nick, that was your first experience. Pretty good?
Yeah, pretty solid. Can't complain one bit.
Yeah. Good food, good company, and, of course, a couple drinks in there as well. We had a Miller Lite or 2 while we were out there, so that was always a lot of fun.
I need a Black Rifle RTD right now.
That's why we're here. Let's just say it that way.
Can we have that request? Can we request? Listen here, Black Rifle. We need y'all to send us some
Didn't
RTDs,
take us very long for
okay?
the first Isaiah Stanback sponsorship.
Ready
pitch.
to drink. If y'all don't know what RTD is, that's ready to drink. That means it comes in a can. They sent us some last year, Kyle.
Yeah, it was really good.
I think it would be perfect if we had a shipment sent down here for camp, so that every morning we can have our RTD Black Rifle coffee. What do you think?
I agree 100%.
This is a thing, John. Just get used to it. Every
saying,
once
man.
in a while, Stanback, he just looks into the one-shot camera, and he just decides to make a pitch to one of those sponsors. Happened with Essilor. It happened with all the different sponsors along the way. I don't even know if I can say their name yet, but anymore. But Quaker Oats, it'll happen at some point. Like, yeah, it's always a thing.
He's a pro.
He is a pro. He's a pro's pro. All right, like I said, 2 padded practices down. I want to get first impressions on how they've looked, how the team has looked through those 2 padded practices. But first, I want to do it's kind of like news and notes for those that listened to the show last year. I would give it to Patrick, and Patrick would give news and notes. Before that, Rob was really big on it. But I want to split it up. I want everybody to give me one talking point. We kind of did it on Monday, where it's one storyline that's really stuck out to you, but I'm going to call them talking points. I just have a better name for it now since it is Talking Cowboys. But, John, I'll let you start it off. What's the number one thing on your mind?
I mean, I'm not going to say that this should be everybody's number one thing, but for me personally, it's really been the offensive line and developing anybody behind that starting 5. I know we talked about it the other day, but especially with Zach Martin not being out here, that's my one area of concern is the depth of that offensive line, because I do believe that if they can develop some depth there, that it can just fill a lot of holes, answer a lot of questions, everything can click because of that. So, it's just tough out here because they're going against a loaded defensive line. And so I want to come away from these practices and share a bunch of stuff of like, no, this guy did this. And the defensive line looks monstrous. So it's like I'm really looking forward to the preseason games to kind of gauge, okay, where are some of these guys like Farniak and Josh Ball, and well, let's go against some of those guys. But that, to me, like when I look at the roster, I'm always going back to the offensive line.
What do you think, Nick, on that regard?
On the offensive line regard, yeah, the depth worries me for sure. I don't feel too comfortable if Zach Martin is not on the field on week 1. I wouldn't feel comfortable if he is, and then an injury happens somewhere down the line. Yeah. So, like we've talked about, I think that's the only position group you could really look at and be like, okay, that's a bit of a concern in the depth.
Isaiah?
It gives me the bubble guts, Kyle. Yeah, it gives me the bubblies. So you ever had like something that just doesn't sit right? They're not settled.
I've got that feeling right now.
You got it right now? You got the bubblies? If you guys see Kyle, just lean up on one side. Y'all know what just takes place. It's unsettling right now. And I am not only just because of Zach Martin's absence, but also because of the aspect of they're just moving a lot of guys around.
Yeah.
And we get it. You got to protect Tyron. We get it. T Steele's coming off an injury. We get it. Martin's not here. But, like, we as, analysts, we don't have anything to really rest on right now. And that's why these preseason games are going to be so influential and so just prevalent, because we need to know what's their game plan. Because right now it doesn't feel as if there is one, even though we know there is. It's like a crap game right now, man. Just roll the dice and you're kind of seeing what falls.
If you could point at any position group to be the kryptonite on this team, it's a runaway favorite.
Yeah,
It's
no
a
doubt in
runaway
my mind.
favorite.
It would be offensive line. Does it make you feel any better, though, the fact that they are going up against the defensive line that is so loaded, is so deep, and they have that talent level to where, and Mike McCarthy talked about it the other day, where it's almost an iron sharpens iron mentality, where the offensive line, like John said, it's no doubt like they're struggling, but they're going up against one of the best defensive fronts in football. Does that provide at least a little bit of comfort in that situation?
Oh, yeah, no, it does. They're going to get great work, and that's the other thing. Like, a lot of people might look at it as, well, they need to go out there and go add somebody, add one of these, a veteran free agent that you can maybe get on the cheap to help out at guards. Yeah, that could potentially happen, but it's kind of like the backup running back spot. They want to be able to see. Mike McCarthy wants to be able to see, like, what are these guys capable of? This is the time when you can see it.
Correct.
Let's see if we can develop somebody right now. This is the time to do it. So while we sit here and have questions about it, it could be going to them as the plan exactly.
And I agree wholeheartedly on that. I do believe that they have a game plan and they have a backup to the backup.
Yeah.
And they have a backup to the backup to the backup.
Yeah.
As we've seen over the past years, they've always had a game plan in that regard. And they are. This is the time where you find out what your guys can and can't do. And I just can't wait for those preseason games to show up because you know that Tyron's your left tackle, right? Well, if Tyron's not your left tackle, who's your left tackle? Well, I'm bumping Tyler, right? Well, behind Tyler, who is it? Well, that's what they're playing around with right now. If they find themselves in that situation, they need to know what their capabilities are, and I'm not sure that we feel very holistically confident in that right now. The guard position is going to be something else. Are they going against really great talent? Absolutely. The defensive line is absolutely. They're freaking juggernauts out there. It's positive in the light that you get to go against high caliber talent. It's negative in the sense if you don't get an opportunity to see what these guys are truly capable of because they're getting their butts kicked often, So it's a give and take, when they go out there and they have preseason. Oh, okay, this is going to be easier. And, yeah, they'll perform better than what we've seen out here at practice because of the caliber of talent. But at the same time, I don't know how effectively these coaches can really judge the production of the players when they're getting smacked up left and right by this amazing D-line.
One thing I just want to add real quick on that, it's also a part for me because there is changes on offense with bringing in Brian Schottenheimer, with Mike McCarthy calling the plays. They talk about getting the play in early to Dak. If I'm a coach, I don't want Dak going up there and the very first thing he's worried about is like, is this offensive line going to be holding? He's got so much on his plate, with dissecting what's the defense doing right now. Like, I need him to be as confident as possible in that offensive line in front of him.
When we were talking the other day about the West Coast style and the West Coast concepts and making it simple on Dak post-snap, does it make it harder on Dak pre-snap walking up to the line of scrimmage, especially whenever there is an added element of, okay, let's make sure I get blocked for this play. But is there an added it just not concern. I don't want to say concern.
I understand what you're saying.
But is there an added pressure on him going up to the line of scrimmage to be able to read and to be able to diagnose quicker and better because everything happens so quick after the snap?
I don't. Had it been last year's system, I would say yes. But being at the West Coast system is a quick release, get the ball out of your hands quickly type of setting.
Yeah.
This offensive line isn't going to have to hold their blocks for an expanded duration of time. Nothing like last year. Usually, from a quarterback's perspective, if I'm under the center, it's 3-step game. Majority of this passing game is 3-step game or play action. I'm not saying there's not 5 and 7 steps. There is, but majority of it is 3 steps. Getting it out your hands quickly. Your receivers are getting about 5 to 7 yards. Your tight ends are getting about 5 to 7 yards down the field. You always have a short option. You always have an intermediate option around 10 to 12 yards, which your receivers get there. That's your 5-step read. It's really going to be like your second option. So you have a 3-step read, you have a 5-step read, and then you have a, hey, just get rid of it or take off read. So I don't foresee them having to hold their blocks, which is plays to their benefit. You don't need a bunch of absolute dogs up there to hold the ground all day long. But for those instances, you still need a solid offensive line, and I think that the Dallas Cowboys will have that. Right now, we're just looking at the second and third strings and trying to figure out, okay, if these scenarios that have presented themselves over the recent years, obviously show back up, who's going to be the one that rises to the top?
That's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because while it does help you, I guess a bad offensive line never helps you, but I guess it's better to have whenever you have a quick release game and a quick release offense. you have to get the running game facilitated in some way
That's
too.
different,
And
yeah.
if you can't get that with the offensive line, that could happen if Zach doesn't show up and an injury happens. That's when we start seeing a doomsday option on that offensive line. But I am glad you brought up that defensive line point, because that was something I was thinking yesterday. Whenever this defensive line, the first 2 days through pads, were just obliterating everything up front, and I was thinking in the back of my head, I don't play many video games, Kyle, but I do play 2K and Madden a lot.
Okay.
Whenever I buy the new game every year, my goal is to get to the Hall of Fame or the All Madden level. And every year, even though I know it's dumb, I start on that level, and I'm like, okay, this is too hard. I need to work my way up. I feel like that's what's happening with the offensive line right now. They're starting on the Hall of Fame. They're starting on the All Madden. They need to somehow figure out how to work back to like veteran or pro and kind of work their way up, because it's not looking great right now.
You get your footing. I like that. That's good. I mean, let's get to the All Pro level, and then you get to the Hall of Fame level, and then we can push and we can keep on rolling.
And that's when we're really hooping.
Yeah,
that's when
when
we're
it's
really
getting
hooping.
real big time. All right, so that's talking point number one. Nick, what was your talking point?
The running back 2 situation. I don't feel like there's a ton of clarity in that department. Mike McCarthy did provide a little bit of confidence in Rico Dowdle and Malik Davis earlier this week, but with Ronald Jones' suspension, I think that throws another kind of wrench in this conversation. And Ronald Jones is the guy in that room who has a little bit of a different skill set. He has a different experience level than everyone in that group. So not having him in the first 2 games, how does that affect his roster status even? So I think that's going to be a position group that sees a lot of fluidity through the preseason. I think it is too early to kind of tell who exactly is going to come up and take that RB2 spot, but I think preseason is going to really determine a lot there.
Yeah, whenever you get the pads clicking and clacking a little bit. I mean,
Yep.
even out here, they're touching the hips. Like, they're playing two-hand touch here. That's ultimately what it is. Not in the offensive and defensive line, and there's a little bit of a pop, but you keep them upright. And that's different whenever you're a running back, because you got to find a way to blow through it.
Absolutely, and I love Deuce Vaughn. Do not get me wrong, but there's a couple of these like spin arounds, bounce off guys where like he'd be getting flattened. So
Yeah.
I want to see him do that in the preseason, be able to bounce guys off that are actually trying to tackle him.
But this bouncing off and spinning, though, is great for the videos.
Oh, 100%. Our social engagement's
Yeah.
been fantastic.
That
John.
part's been great. Keep doing that, Deuce.
Yeah,
we like
come
that.
on, Deuce, bring
John's
it to
sitting
us.
here like, all right, sweet,
Yeah.
Deuce.
Oh, yeah,
Deuce,
yeah.
Deuce.
No, do that somersaulting again.
Come on.
People
keep
love
on,
it.
Keep rolling.
Yeah.
Dak jumping over the line and getting two-hand touch from behind. I think he would have scored that touchdown anyways. Everybody's
Right,
kind of I was right in front of it was the Dak design run in practice
yeah.
on Tuesday, and J-Ron Curse is behind him. He got him on the hip. I was like, I don't know if Curse makes that play, because if that's a game, Dak is extended and he is getting to the goal line. Like that, he's done that so many different times. So.
I think me and Isaiah have talked about it. How great was it to see a read option
Yeah.
again? I feel like I haven't seen that from this offense in a while.
Been a couple RPOs in there. 'Cause
Yeah.
There were a
Yeah.
couple at the goal line yesterday. He hit Jake Ferguson on one where it was a read option, and he immediately hit the tight end in the flat, and it was a wide open touchdown on the goal
RPO,
line.
baby.
Love that.
RPO is not a bad deal.
What's your talking point, Isaiah?
I have to agree. I think the running back situation, aside from the offensive line, that's my next box that I feel like they need to check. I'm not 100% confident, but it's also a position group that you can go out there and grab somebody late and be okay. So I think that they have the time on their side to get to these preseason games and find out exactly what they have. I also have full boat of confidence in Malik Davis and Rico Dowdle. I mean, those guys, I know everybody's talking about Deuce because he's a newest addition, and he's a smaller guy, electrifying, all that jazz. But the guys that have been here, those guys are good. Those guys are really good, and I have full confidence in them, and I know this coaching staff does as well, because they have shown trustworthy.
It was interesting to hear Mike McCarthy after that one press conference a few days ago when he was asked specifically what of that second group, the next running backs, has stood out to you. And I'll be honest, I did not expect him to say Rico Dowdle first.
Yeah.
Like it kind of surprised me, And so that was obviously intriguing. And then talking to Mike McCarthy yesterday after the press conference was over, he was asked about Ezekiel Elliott and why he wouldn't. They don't want to go that direction right now. And he talked about how, like we said with the offensive line, wanting to see out here, wanting to see in the preseason games what you have with some of the younger guys. But the name has to stay until Ezekiel Elliott signs elsewhere, because the owner and general manager will not close that door on Ezekiel Elliott. You have to keep that as a possibility that he could be returning to the Cowboys. I don't know if that happens or not, but you can't close the door on that right now.
What do you think the percentage is? That
It went-
Ezekiel Elliott suits up week 1.
For me, it's gone up in the last 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would agree.
Who do you think would
I'm not
That's
saying it's a
close.
high percentage.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
saying it's gone
sure,
up.
it's just gone up a little
Yeah.
bit. But who do you think would close that door first? Do you think it would be the front office, or do you think it'd be Zeke's party that would close that door first?
I think right now it would have to be Zeke's party because I think it's been made known to his party kind of where the Cowboys are financially for, they're not looking to pay like a number one. That's in the offseason, everyone would bring up like the Dalvin Cook stuff all the time. I'm just like, that's just not a price point that they're going to, they're more into the Leonard Fournette type of like, if they don't find the right guy out here, then you don't have to spend a ton and bring a guy in. So I think if his dollar amount was willing to come down, then I think that would be the thing there.
Okay.
But I don't know outside of, the Patriots are the only other team that's been, the rumored to have, well, not rumored, it's been reported that they've met with him. So maybe he ends up there, but as long as he is a free agent, you just can't close the door on it. But there were definitely times where during the offseason, I was like, it's like 1% chance. And now I'll probably go up to maybe 5%.
This is just my assumption. I assume that offer sheet is on the table waiting for him.
Wow.
I
think it's
assume
that
that
close?
No, I'm not necessarily that it's that close. I'm saying like this is your price point. If you want to meet that, sure, we'd love to have you, but we can't go past that dollar
You're
amount.
waiting for them to. It's like what John was saying. Like you're waiting for for Zeke's party to come down for Dallas to make it happen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then from his perspective, though, I kind of wonder too, like what other options he has out there because, like the role he had when he was drafted. And then the role he would have now is just so different. Maybe he has a better opportunity to another team where he's got a better chance to maybe be their lead ball carrier by the end of the season, That maybe right now it doesn't look that way, but he signs with this team and you're like, oh, man, end of the season, Ezekiel Elliott was that team's leading rusher. You might not expect it now because he's not on a team, but this stuff moves quickly,
Would you want to see that, Isaiah? Would you want to see Zeke back with the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think it'd be obviously great for him, great for the team and the fan base. I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave his number away immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
To a good player, too.
Yeah. So, I mean.
It'd be hard to take that one away.
I mean, that's not the only measure, obviously, but that's major. That's in. For somebody who meant as much to this organization as he did, they hurry up and gave that away. That means something. So I don't really foresee that happening. And plus, there's a lot of really great opportunities around the league right now that are kind of falling into his lap. So I think the longer he waits, the more leverage he gains. Unfortunately, there's injuries in this game. The more running backs that get hurt around the league, the higher his stock goes. So he's just really sitting back, chilling right now, not having to go through camp.
That is a great point. It is so true because they haven't even played any preseason games yet, and there's just that's just the nature of the game. There's going to be freak injuries, and when that happens, there could be a team that was a contender that all of a sudden is like, man, if you come in right now, you can be the missing piece to this team, and for him, how could you turn that down?
I don't think you could. I really don't. Because I think that's what he's waiting for at this point. He's waiting for that opportunity to arise, whether that's in Dallas, New England, insert name here of an injury that has yet to happen. But camp injuries happen, especially at the running back position. Preseason injuries happen at the running back position. So we may not even see that saga come to a close until week 2 or 3 of the preseason, and then you finally get a full lay of the land on what the NFL brings from a running back standpoint and what it would bring for Zeke going into this season. But all right, I like the talking points overall. We hit a lot there. When we come back, though, I want to continue with first impressions of the padded practices, and I want to talk a little bit more about this battle in the trenches and some of the youth up front. Has anybody stood out? Because there's one name that I'm looking at right now that is starting to get some reps with the first teamers that I did not expect coming into camp. We'll tell you about that a whole lot more when we come back with Talkin Cowboys.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Are you ready to take coffee off your grocery list forever? Black Rifle Coffee Club is here to help. As a coffee club member, you'll get your favorite coffees roasted, packaged, and shipped to your door free of charge on your preferred schedule. Set it, forget it, and never run low on coffee again. Members also get exclusive deals on coffee, products, and discounts from partner brands. Ease your mind and let Black Rifle worry about your coffee supply. Go to blackriflecoffee.com to join the coffee club today.
Cowboys fans, after that move, we've just coined the term Rowdy Replay. Let's roll back the tape.
Okay, there's our mascot Rowdy cheering on the boys, and now he's on his phone on his Bank of America mobile banking app?
Staying on top of his finances with his virtual financial assistant, Erica.
Bank of America's digital tools are so impressive. Cowboys fans just can't stop banking. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/can't-stop-banking.
Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. Member FDIC.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to Talkin Cowboys.
Back here with more Talking Cowboys, presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Dallas Cowboys. This segment is brought to you by Invisalign, the official smile of the Dallas Cowboys. John Machota, Nick Harris, Isaiah Standback. I'm Kyle Yeomans. What are you shaking your head
swindler,
at?
you.
What?
You're such a swindler.
What did I do?
You know, Fandangoed his way into getting a doggone Invisalign drop.
No, that's not true. I had to pay full cash for my
Sure you
Invisalign.
did.
I 100% had to.
Paid.
I had to.
Something else.
I got a little bit of
All of a sudden, Kyle gets Invisalign, and then all of a sudden next year they're their sponsor.
That's interesting.
Just a little
Next year
bit
I'm coming out with straight
suspicious.
pearly whites.
Exactly right.
Everybody's going to get their teeth fixed. It's going to be great. I'm trying to help everybody out. That's all. Yeah, it's that and Quaker Oats, and I like coffee. So, I mean, it all just kind of lines up, doesn't it? It all kind of lines up. Right. We're also going to, in the future of the second segment, I believe there's a rumor, just a rumor, guys, that we're going to get a text line for the first time in podcast history. A text line where you can text in from the fans can text to us directly, and we would see on the text line.
I heard our chat box be live, man.
Yeah.
I heard our chat box be.
It's legit. It's legit. We won't have it today, but I was going to take some fan questions, but we'll have to save that for another show. We'll do it on Fridays. What Beamer's promising. We're going to make that happen.
Fridays be lit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Say it with your chest Fridays.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Got to say it with your chest.
Chest Fridays, baby.
All right. Speaking of saying it with your chest, TJ Bass, offensive lineman, undrafted free agent out of Oregon. This is the kind of in-depth training camp coverage that you get on Talking Cowboys. Talk about undrafted free agents on the guard spot. He's rotated in a couple times. He did so in rookie minicamp where he was running with the ones, at least the ones of rookies. He did so with OTAs. And now he's starting to rotate in at guard with no Zach Martin and rotating in and out with Josh Ball at the right guard spot. Have you seen anything from TJ Bass and what he's brought to the table, John? And has he impressed you at all? I'm trying to find a bright spot on the offensive line, and I think he might be one of them.
I can't say that there's anything about him that necessarily jumped out to me, but he was a guy that when they signed him after the draft, Nick Eatman was kind of making fun of me for this, that I went and got him off to the side. You know how, like, in the locker room, how the rookies aren't in there yet? Yeah. I was like, the PR staff was like, is there anybody else you want to talk to that they're not bringing out? And I was like, yeah, I kind of want to talk to TJ just because the position that he plays, he was a guy that I want to say Dane Brugler might have had as a 6th-round grade on, but it was definitely a draftable grade.
I had a 5th-round grade.
Okay, maybe it might have been a 5th.
Yeah.
And so because of that, he's been a guy that I've kind of wanted to pay attention to. I really haven't as much as I've wanted because of in these first couple padded practices. I feel like more of my focus has been on the, receivers and DBs and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously running with the ones is what you want, and he's going to get every opportunity for that. And in talking to him, it was one of those things where as you get later in the draft, you're not getting drafted, so. And then you start getting calls from teams, and it's like, okay, where do I fit? What team do I have the best chance to get some playing time? Your agent's talking to those teams and stuff like that, and the Cowboys are obviously a good fit for him.
I haven't seen a lot of TJ Bass this week or in the last week specifically, but I will say where he comes from and the coaching that he comes from leads me to have a lot of confidence in what he can do. Alex Mirabal, who was his offensive line coach that brought him into Oregon, he's now at Miami, and we'll dive into specific position coaches around draft time and why those are so important. But Alex Mirabal is the best offensive line coach in the entire country, and for him to go into the JUCO ranks and pull TJ Bass out and make him a priority, that says a lot about what he can do. And he started immediately as soon as he got to Eugene. So, just having that in his background, even if he did go undrafted, that leads me to a lot of confidence about what he can do.
Has anybody else, in terms of the rookies, has anybody else jumped out off the page, whether it's offensive line or not, just rookie class in general? Has anybody jumped off the page from?
For sure, we could start with the duo of Jalen's, and honestly, you could trickle it down to the trio of Jalen wide receivers that have just had a good week.
In general, yeah.
But talking about the two rookies, Jalen Brooks and then Jalen Moreno-Cropper. It was Jalen Moreno-Cropper more so last week, and then once the pads got put on and we could be a little bit more physical out here, it was Jalen Brooks. And man, he's been fantastic through camp, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot more in the show.
What do you think, Isaiah?
Yeah, Brooks is the only one that really pops out for me right now. I think that he's shown up a few times. I like his release off the line of scrimmage. I like his ability to separate at the top of the route, and then obviously with his size, he has strong hands. He's really strong at the point of the catch, and he's a good dude. I like him. Listen to him talk, have an opportunity to kind of talk to him a little bit. I like him.
How can a tall, lanky wide receiver like that, one, grow into his frame? Because that's something that Coach McCarthy and the offensive staff has talked about. I mean, there's a lot of times he looks very, very long. He's just kind of a little sloppy. He's raw. Let's say it that way. He's got this raw talent. How does he grow into that? And then, two, how does his coaching staff unlock an ability in the red zone to use him? Because he had one touchdown grab his final year at South Carolina. He played the entire season, had one touchdown grab. It was a 20-yarder at Tennessee. That was it. That was the only one he had. So how do you unlock that a little bit by putting him in situations to be successful in the red zone?
Confidence and reps. Let him get his reps. Let him get confidence. I mean, from the things I've seen him do over the last few days, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't have success at this level, regardless of what he did in college. It's all about opportunities, all about the situation that you're put in, the system that you're in, the person who's throwing you the ball. All those things matter, right? Everything. That's why I'm not a big stat guy, because there's so many other things that affect it. From what I've seen, he is a good fit here. Nobody does what he does currently at that position group. And they don't have anybody to fulfill that role. MG is their goal guy, really, kind of, sort of, right now. Cooks is going to cook people this year. Just system alone with him is nasty. CD's going to do what CD does. And they don't have a guy that they can really go up there and just say, hey, we're going to run you on a 7-step post. It doesn't matter. Body up the guy and go grab it. And that's who he is right now until somebody else shows him up. So I look forward to seeing him in the preseason.
He's starting to creep into that wide receiver conversation as far as making the team and being on this travel roster. When preseason comes around, that's when it's going to be, hey, prove your keep on this roster and prove that you can make it happen in a game as well.
And we've seen that happen a couple times out here, John. I mean, think about Simi Fehoko is a great example where in camp he looks great, he flashes, he's got this size, he's got this ability, and then all of a sudden it just fizzles away. I don't want that to happen to Jalen Brooks, but we've seen it a couple times before. Do you think he can continue what we've seen out here whenever we get into preseason play?
Yeah, I do. And, I mean, when I came out here, if I was doing my wide receiver depth chart that I thought would make the 53, he was not on it. But after these last few days, I'm like, oh, yeah, no, he's absolutely in that mix with, you mentioned Fehoko. I think Jalen Tolbert's in a really good spot there, and Turpin's really impressed me out here. So they're not going to obviously keep 7 wide receivers. So, there's going to be an odd man out. But, man, if you told me right now I had to cut down that roster, man, it'd be tough to keep Jalen Brooks off of it.
There's a tough decision in a couple positions, and there comes a time at camp where you start playing that game, where you start playing the cut game. You start looking at how many defensive linemen are you going to take. You're going to want to take 10, 11 defensive linemen in general, and that includes edge rushers. You're going to want to take 4 or 5 linebackers. You're going to want to take 4 safeties. But then where do you cut down? What position group do you have to level it out with? And that's when it's going to get interesting with wide receiver, because like you said, there's no way they can take 7 with them. but there's going to have to be 6 guys that they're going to have to cut it down to at some point, and so an odd man out is certainly going to happen, not only at wide receiver but at a couple positions, Isaiah.
Yeah, a couple positions, but I'm keeping my eye on that receiver position just because I guess Jalen Brooks, obviously the battle of the Jalen's, right? You got all the Jalen's, the trifecta.
Yeah, exactly.
But Jalen Brooks, specifically him versus Simi Fehoko, when I look at the two of them, the difference, aside from the initial investment, Jalen Brooks seems more eager to contribute on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Just my observation. Mm-hmm. My observation. He seems eager to actually go out there. And we asked about special teams, he's like, oh, yeah. Like, give me that. I didn't get that vibe from Simi when he first came in, nor last year. Not to say that he wasn't willing, but there's something to be said about knowing how you're going to impact this team, knowing what's required to make this team, and then obviously being able to be effective in those roles. They better get the conditioning up because they're going to be all over the place in preseason. They're going to be on the field for 3 quarters, and they're going to be on special teams and at the receiver. So they better get their conditioning in because they're going to be asked to not only have impact on offense but also make impact on special teams because that's how you're going to make this roster. None of the receivers at the bottom of this roster are going to just be offensive threats.
Yeah.
You have 4 receivers that are locked in. Call it how it is. You got 4 guys that are locked in. You got CD, you got Cooks, and you got Gallup, and you got Turp. Those guys are locked in. Those 4. So you could
argue it with it being a 3rd-round pick, Jalen Tolbert's probably the 5th.
Tolbert's probably, with the camp that he's having, they're going to give him another opportunity. So call it 5. So there's a battle for 1 spot. Really, unless something just goes horribly wrong for Jalen Tolbert, which I don't see right now. He's playing very confident. It looks like a totally different player from last year.
He has the leverage of being a top 100
drafted
pick.
Yeah, absolutely. He has time.
They're not going to cut ties with a top 100 pick.
Correct.
And so, that's what gets weird because we got to Oxnard, and one of the first topics was wide receiver 4, who's got it? And it feels like it feels like Tolbert, and I guess you could say Turpin, have that wide receiver
first 5
room kind of locked up. But then it's now the battle shifts to wide receiver 6, who is here whenever they make that trip.
And that's what people
New York.
People don't understand how mentally stressful camp is. Imagine being one of, I don't know how many guys they got, but 12 guys at receiver probably, I'd imagine, at camp. I haven't counted it up. And knowing that you're all going after 1 spot. It's the most stressful thing in the world. Every decision, if I go out there, I don't remember the tight end yesterday. There was a tight end that got in there, and he got in with the ones and false started. Immediately taken out.
Is it Princeton Fant? I think it was 48.
It might have been Fant.
I think it was Fant.
Immediately you're taken out. No, that alone will beat you up for the rest of the week because, I lost the trust. They put me in a situation. I lost their trust. Now I'm going to have to do 10 positive things just to make up for that 1. That's what you're dealing with every single day in terms of the stress of camp, man. You're literally, I better do this right. I better do this right. And it makes it almost impossible to just be you. So it's not until the preseason games really show up that you see the real version of these players. Camp is awesome, but when they get to the games, that's when they can literally relax and be like, okay, now I can play again. Right? And even then, you're still under so much duress. But people need to understand the stresses, man, of camp. It's hard.
And I think that's going on in every camp every year.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But for this team particularly, for me, this is clearly the best roster the Cowboys have had since I've covered the team from top to bottom. Mike McCarthy said the other day it's going to be a very difficult 53 cut. There's just so many spots that are already locked up that there's so many guys in those positions, like you're saying, that it's like, you make one little mistake like that and you're just like, man, is that the difference of me making an NFL team? Am I going to get another chance? Am I going to get an opportunity maybe with another team? Who knows what happens here? Because, this roster is, and then, we talked about earlier, there'll be injuries and that'll shift things as well. But as it sits here right now, obviously there were some good teams in 14 and 16 and stuff like that, but they were not as good from top to bottom. There were some weaknesses there, and they've done a good job of shoring up those areas. So there just isn't, when I look at this roster, there just isn't all those spots. Oh, this guy might make it on special teams. This guy might help it out here. There's just not that many spots available.
Man, and even so, it's interesting hearing the different viewpoints because you're seeing this from an outside source, a beat writer working for The Athletic, but you could hear the stress in your voice because, hey, they have this roster, they have this opportunity to make this jump, and you don't want to be left behind. I could hear the stress in Isaiah's voice as a former player on the other side of it too, of feeling that stress, going to sleep at night, and you don't want to put your iPad away because you want to look at the next couple plays, and because you want to end up in the right situation at the right time. And you mentioned how it beats yourself up for certain things, little things that you think, little mistakes that add up and that break that trust between you and the coaching staff, and how it bothers these guys for days. I can tell you've got a couple of those memories as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That beat you up too.
There's one play that I remember when I was with Seattle, and I was up to obviously contract year, all this kind of stuff, and I was coming actually the following year I was coming off an injury, and they put me in a situation in practice where they were looking for one guy to fill a role in terms of big plays, and they put me in for that play, and I freaking dropped the ball. I dropped it, and I knew when I dropped it, I was like, dang, that was it. Like that was the, if I make that play, I'm their guy. You know, if I don't make that
given
play,
a chance, if you were given 100 chances to make that play, how many times
you
make it?
99. 99 times you make that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, but you know, like in your heart, and then you're thinking over what could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? What would I change? And then it messes you up for another play, and then it snowballs, right? Then you start seeing guys that used to be confident. I mean, there's guys, I'm not going to name their names right now, but there's guys that we saw last year playing with full confidence that are walking around with their head down right now because of situations that they're in, right? And you can see it on their face, like they're stressing. Now I know it, right? From the player standpoint, I'm like, they're in their own head.
I kind of want you to say that.
Nah, I'm not going to say it.
You don't want to say it?
Well, I can just tell you when he was saying that, I'm thinking of from last year. I'm thinking of Jalen Tolbert. Where just like, you come here, and then Mike McCarthy wants you to play all 3 wide receiver spots, and that was a lot. And he admitted that, in I think it was after OTA practice one time in his locker room, and at his locker, about how there was just a lot, And then I keep going back to, that play in Green Bay where, he lines up off sides and that just is going to beat you down, and that's going to weigh on you, like, I'm finally given this opportunity, and this happens, and like you just said, like it snowballs into where like now it starts affecting you here, it affects you in this part of the game, and your preparation, things like that. And so I do think that because of him having that experience, he gets to go in the off season, work with Dak, get into the playbook and everything like that, and have a chance to rebound from it. But yeah, that is a great point.
Talking about the mental adversity aspect, if we're looking at all the guys that are vying for this last receiver spot, I like Jalen Brooks even more because of the way he's approaching everything. He's like, look, yeah, I've had great days, but it's brick by brick. I got to stack it. I don't get too high. I don't get too low. I'm very level-headed. That's what he said a couple days ago when I pulled him off one-on-one, and that's what he said again yesterday whenever we had him in media availability. So being able to have that mindset, I think, is going to be what eventually helps in those situations.
Yeah, I like him.
13 receivers out here right now. 13 of them. And I feel like all of them have made some sort of storyline or headline at some point along the way.
When you say that, all I think of is like, I wonder what the NFL record is of like what on cut day 53. What's the most receivers a team's ever kept? Like, has there been a team that kept 7, 8 receivers?
You would have
know of.
Yeah, you would have to.
There's got to be
stretch at other positions. That's the thing.
Yeah. There are 8 guys going for one spot. I don't think people get it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I really don't think people get it. There's 8 guys at just that position group going for one spot. Yeah. There's guys out here that are busting their butts every single day, giving it their absolute all, and they know they have zero chance of making this roster.
And it's so competitive because let's say Jalen Brooks has a day Thursday and Saturday, doesn't have a great day.
Yeah.
He's right back there, and the door's right back open, like you said.
The other thing is with wide receivers, a position that we all can watch.
We all have fun watching,
like and it's just if you mess up, like you talk about dropping that pass, like everybody sees it. Like whereas if you miss like a block, you got some other guys around you. People
kind of hide a little bit,
but they throw to you and you drop that pass or whatever like that. You just feel like every single eyeball is on you.
I mean, you can go back to even last year in camp. Will Greer was almost a backup.
No, yeah.
People don't remember that. Like Will Greer was almost a backup.
He had a better camp.
And an injury happened. Right? An injury happened. And because that injury happened, now all of a sudden you're looking at a Cooper Rush who has a brand new contract.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there were some days out here.
You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff turns quick, man.
There were some days out here in 2016 where Jamil Showers had a better day than Dak Prescott.
Yeah?
It's crazy to think about now, but and then Kellen goes down and just the way that whole thing came together and just how fast that moved, and that's at the most important position. So
the NFL moves quickly.
Yes, it
does. And it waits for nobody.
Nope.
That's ultimately what it is. You better keep up or get out of the way. Yep. And that's how it goes. All right. When we come back, one final segment. It's going to be a short one. We went a little long this time. Sorry, Beamer. But we'll wrap things up and we'll talk a little defensive line because that's another spot where cuts are going to be tough coming up in the next couple weeks. With more Talking Cowboys right after this.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Black Rifle Coffee Company serves premium coffee to people who love America. When you drink Black Rifle coffee, you are directly supporting veterans, law enforcement, and first responders in your community. Black Rifle's expert roasters love coffee almost as much as Texas loves football, so it makes sense that America's Coffee partnered with America's team. Go online at blackriflecoffee.com and fuel up with the official coffee of the Dallas Cowboys. That's blackriflecoffee.com to fuel up today.
Want to use the Cowboys locker room's favorite products? Check out the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black. Right now, you can get the Jack Black Playmaker, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The Playmaker includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites, plus a full-sized Intense Therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word Cowboys. The Jack Black Playmaker, $10, free shipping.
Welcome back into Dear Doctor, the show where I answer life's questions with an ice-cold can of Dr. Pepper. Sheila, let's hear from our next caller, would you?
Dear Doctor, my friend supported me during a tough time, but what's the right gift that says, thanks for being a shoulder to cry on?
Okay, this one's easy. I say give her a delicious Dr. Pepper. Nothing says, thanks, girl, better than a one-of-a-kind soda. Yes, any Dr. Pepper flavor will do. Now, just a reminder that I don't need to be a real doctor to know that Dr. Pepper is the one you deserve.
Time for the final segment of Talking Cowboys, presented by Black Rifle Coffee. This portion of Talking Cowboys is brought to you by Quaker Oats, a super trusted superfood. Quaker Oats, the official oatmeal sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Got the guns going.
Love the oats, baby.
Boom.
Love the oats. Again, the RT. It's not an RTG. I guess what would it be? Just an RTG? Ready to go?
RTE, ready to eat?
Ready to eat. I'll take that. Yeah, ready to eat.
RTE.
We need some RTEs.
How many times
We
a
do
week?
need some
Is this an
RTEs.
everyday thing?
Oh, my gosh. You don't love it? I
needs
mean,
to
I
be.
love Quaker.
I can't eat breakfast. I just am not hungry in the morning.
You are mad.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
It's the most important meal. Are you
I know,
serious?
I know.
I don't eat
Feel like
breakfast
this.
a lot.
What
but
time
like,
did you eat last night?
I ate at that media party at probably like 8 or 9.
So 8 o'clock. Let's call it
Time
8
is
o'clock.
fuzzy.
Okay, 8 o'clock. Right now it's what? About to be 10 o'clock. Close
Yeah.
to 10 o'clock. Okay. So for the last 14 hours,
Yeah.
your body has nothing to eat off.
It's got some water.
14 hours. That's why breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Get your Quaker Oats.
All right, PSA.
That was pretty good.
He's a sponsor's dream.
No, he really is. It's annoying. Oh, back here with Isaiah Standback, the walking billboard. We've got Nick Harris. We've got John Machota. I'm Kyle Yeomans, wrapping things up here on Talking Cowboys. And, I mean, the stress level is high for a lot of these guys at camp, and 13 wide receivers going down to 6. Think about defensive line, and I brought it up a little bit in the last segment. Where do you draw the line? And there's some big names that are going to be cut at some point, and big bodies that are going to get cut. You think about a guy like Neville Gallimore, who was a third-round pick. He is fighting for his spot on the roster with Mozzie Smith in front of him, Jonathan Hankins in front of him, and I think Gallimore's actually had a solidified camp. I think he's done a decent job in the middle. He's provided a little bit of pass rush, but has anybody else stood out to you on that defensive line as stepping up to try and fight for one of those roster spots?
I wouldn't say. I mean, there's obviously been the guys that you're expecting to have been wrecking shop, but yeah, when I look at the roster, I'm like, man, it's gonna be tough for them to keep more than 10 defensive linemen. And when I say 10, I'm counting Micah with that, even though on the roster they list him at linebacker.
I think you have to now, right?
So I like Neville Gallimore is a guy like you mentioned.
Bohanna, maybe.
And then obviously that Chauncey Golston / Fahoko, where they kind of play somewhat of a similar hybrid. I do think there's a good chance that both of them make it, but I'm just saying, like, that is a tough spot when you look at from top to bottom. if everyone stays healthy, because that's always the thing. Like, you look at this and we go into it and it's, oh yeah, no, that's because they're going to have everybody. And then you get out here and, Sam Williams is missing some time, and then Dorrance Armstrong isn't. And then so you start moving some pieces around and things like that. But, man, when you look at that from top to bottom, Mike McCarthy said it yesterday, this is the best depth he's had on the defensive line in his coaching career. So I just find it hard to believe that they could go more than 11, and I even think that's going to be tough.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a little bit, and I guess it's kind of throwing a wrench into this conversation a little bit, but it's so deep on that defensive line. Do you consider trading somebody out at some point?
Yeah, that has to be on the table. That has to be on the table.
We said this last year. They should have did it last year.
Yeah. I mean, the opportunity is still there to get offensive line depth.
Or running back.
I'm not going to name names.
Offensive line or running back.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but there are a couple of guys on that defensive line that their max value is right now. And go ahead and get a piece off of them. But, we'll see.
Do you think it's more likely that they go and sign somebody at one of these positions of need, or is it more likely that they use a surplus like defensive line, maybe some of these young linebackers that probably wouldn't get into the mix? Do you think it's more likely that they trade to go get a piece to help out some of these positions?
I'm hopeful. I understand what I say. Okay, I want to be empathetic to guys because it's guys' lives when they have to get up and move. Okay, but it's a business. I feel as if Dallas missed an opportunity last year to be aggressive and trade away some of their defensive line assets. I truly do. I think they could have filled some gaps last year having that surplus of assets. This year it's no different, except for the fact they've added 2 more guys in the draft this year. So you have 2 guys that history says they're going to be on the roster. Okay? All right? And that's Fehoko and Mozzie Smith. All right? So those guys are going to be on the roster. They're there. So you add 2 more guys to a depth chart that was already stacked. I almost think it's as aggressive as this front office has been this offseason in acquiring pieces that are going to be instrumental to their success this year. I think that they won't – I think they have to have learned from their previous mistakes, i.e. mistakes from last year. Not trading, I think they take that step this year and they be aggressive and they trade. Now, I believe that they'll allow a preseason game to go by just to remind everybody how valuable some of these guys are, because it's going to be highly competitive at that position. Once you see how successful they are, I think that a lot of guys are going to be on that trading block. I think they're going to be packaged up and sent off, most likely, to acquire some assets that are of need, because Dallas has a couple weak spots. I mean, their armor is doggone almost bulletproof at this point in terms of their roster, the way their roster is made up.
Sure.
There's a couple soft spots, right? If you have an ability to take some of those hardened spots, right, and fill those gaps, all of a sudden you got a Captain American shield.
When you were saying that, the first thing I was thinking of was in 2018, they kind of felt good about a few of their DBs, not starters, but on their depth, and it was Charvarius Ward at the end of 2018. Wow. They traded him, and they did that for that Parker Enninger. I want to make sure I got this right, from Kansas City. They didn't get much out of Enninger at all, and then Ward ended up being pretty good. So that's all I'm just saying. Like, I'm just thinking of them trading somebody, and what will happen is, like, they'll end up getting in a spot where they're on a team that doesn't have a lot of great defensive line depth, and then they kind of play well, and then you got to hear about it like for the next, whatever.
Think about John Ridgeway last year. Big Ridgeway was a draft pick, and basically he got plucked off of the practice squad roster by Washington. All of a sudden he was stuffing the run against you. A couple weeks later, I mean, he was playing against you, and I mean, you could tell.
I will say though, I mean, as we sit here today, though, like, if he's still on this team right now, I mean, he's in with that group too, where you're just like, I don't think
they're stacked, and that's the reason why the whole conversation is here, right? It's just you have a surplus of assets, so use them to get what you need to cheer up your team.
Yeah, for sure.
And you didn't get anything out of Ridgeway.
Nothing at all.
Yikes.
And you gave up money.
You
gave up money to get him, and you got nothing for him. So that's what I'm saying, learning from their mistakes of the past, what I consider mistakes of the past, and as aggressive as they've been this year to go out there and get Cooks, to get Gilmore, to be in the front office, like they're not sitting back and waiting and getting the leftovers like they have in recent years. Stay aggressive. Keep that energy.
Also with that, McCarthy said the other day about that's part of the reason that they're not scrimmaging or practicing against another team, is because he just wants to really see this first team go against their first team offense, first team defense, because of how loaded this roster is.
We don't need other competition.
Yeah.
We can beat each other up. We don't need to go beat up other teams.
Leads to fights and things like that. But
always.
It got a little chippy yesterday. It was good. It was. There's been a lot of competition. They had a lot of one-on-ones. They had a lot of 7-on-7 work. So of course, with the competition ramping up, the chippiness ensued. So
for sure,
got to keep everybody separated. Got to keep everybody having a productive session. That's the one thing you want to avoid. But it's been good, and I think the camp energy is high. I mean, they're taking the field behind us and going through some walkthroughs, and I think the more that we get into this camp, the more we're going to see that competition ramp up, and we're going to see these guys really fall into roles, because then it turns from a hope to a worry to a concern. Now then it's a desperation as camp goes along. Because you get here, you get off the charter, everybody thinks we're making the team.
Right.
And
no, that's for sure.
All of a sudden you're not, and that's when things can get a little bit wild, and that's when these next couple padded practices are really going to tell us who this team is and how they're going to be built. But that's going to do it for us. We're a little out of time. I feel like we could keep going. We got all day.
45-minute podcast.
It does fly.
We got to get to the season for the hour.
Right.
But good news, we'll be back on Friday. We got one more show this week. We'll talk on Friday. We'll have another padded practice to go off of on Thursday, and then we'll keep on rolling going into week number 3 here in Oxnard.
For you guys on
It'll be a game week at that point, by the way. Talking Cowboys is going to be well represented on that first preseason game.
That's
Isaiah
right.
Stanback's going to be in the booth.
That's right.
You nervous?
Nervous.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
That's it, man.
Hey, there you go.
Sleep with my drawers on.
Isaiah's in the booth for all 3 preseason games, all 3 of them. So he'll be with myself and Bill Jones for the first one, and then it'll be the same booth but flipping roles. I'll do play-by-play for the first one, color for the second one. So we'll flip roles, and then the third one, Michael Irvin, this one guy that played wide receiver here at some point.
Sounds familiar.
He comes in, kicks me out of the booth. Oh, it's okay, it's fine. I'll make it work. So it'll be Bill, Michael, and Isaiah for that third preseason game. So really excited about that. Lots to come. Going to be fun, but it is. We got one more show, then it's game week here on Talking Cowboys. For John Machota, Nick Harris, Isaiah Stanback, for Chris Bean behind the camera, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you on Friday with more Talking Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this,